Okay, so we're standing here in Finca Limoncillo with Erwin Mierisch. He's a fifth generation coffee producer. So we're standing here in his plantation of his yellow and red Pacamaras. We've been purchasing his yellow Pacamara since last year, and we're hoping to bring some more in this year. To begin, where are we standing?
Yeah, so this is our farm, our Limoncillo. It's located inside the municipality of Matagalpa. We're actually just like 45 minutes from the main town. But more specifically, we're in a plot that's called El Pijiway. And it's special because this is where we have our red Pacamara, but also our yellow Pacamara. Usually we tend to separate varieties, but we were very limited with space, so we decided to just plant them together. That's actually been working out so far, fortunately.
And for how long has your family been producing coffee?
We have been producing coffee since 1908. Actually, the first Mierisch to start producing coffee was my great-grandfather. He was actually a German immigrant that emigrated over here in the late 1800s. He was a geologist by trade, so he was hired to help with building of the railroad. But once his work was done, they didn't really have all the funds to pay him for his work. So they ended up giving him some land, a farm called Las Lajas, which is about a couple kilometers away from here. And that's where it started.
And then what were the first coffee plants that you guys planted here?
It was all Typica. Especially in Nicaragua, everything was pretty much Typica. Up until the 80s or 90s, that's when all these new varieties that were derived from Bourbon, like the Caturra, Red Catuai, that were more resistant and also more productive, people started switching out the Typica for these varieties. So now Typica is actually very rare in Nicaragua.
That's very true.
Yeah.
And what inspired you to want to be a part of your family's legacy?
I actually got into coffee working as a barista in New York when I was living in the US. And then eventually my parents asked me if I wanted to move back home to help them. And I had fallen in love at that point with all the specialty coffee in the US and everything. So I was like, I think it's time to come back.
How did you gain so much knowledge so quickly?
An uncle of mine gave me a great piece of advice, which was shut up and listen. So that's pretty much what all I did. The first 2 to 3 years, I was just listening, taking in a bunch of information, hanging out with our agricultural technician, with my grandfather, my aunt, and just trying to absorb as much information as possible. And now I'm slowly starting to process it so that I can verbally explain it,
Awesome.
Yeah.
And what does Fincas Mierisch specialize in?
We specialize in specialty coffee, but also always focusing on sustainability. We want to be able to offer the best quality possible, but also taking care of our environment, which we eventually all end up depending on.
And what varietals do you produce here?
In Limoncillo, this is actually the first farm we found the yellow Pacamara. It actually mutated naturally from our red Pacamara. So we have yellow Pacamara, red Pacamara, we have Javanica, Java Caturra, we have red Catuai, and traditional Caturra, as well as Ethiosar.
And what processes do you use with these coffees, and what different types of fermentation do you do?
We do all the traditional processing, which is the traditional wash, the honeys, full naturals, but we also do what's colloquially called anaerobic fermentation, which is just saying that we're trying to control the type of fermentation we're giving it. So we do that. We also do the anaerobic at low temperature, which we're fermenting the coffee at 6 to 10 degrees Celsius. But then we also do other weirder processes like the funky naturals, which we take coffee to that border of over fermentation. Then we have the perlanera, which is a honey where we actually let a specific type of mold grow on it, which gives it off this very lactic and very creamy profile. So it kind of depends on what the consumer wants. We're willing to even experiment new processes if someone reaches out to us for that.
And how were you guys affected by this pandemic? What did you guys do to kind of shift your business plan to be more adaptable in this situation?
We were definitely affected because unfortunately, this affected everyone. So it affected a lot of our clients in the sense that some of them even went out of business. They weren't able to fulfill the orders that we had established with them. So we were left with quite a bit of coffee. Usually we end or we sell out around, I would say June is still pretty late. This past year, we didn't export our last container until September.
Wow.
So it was very late into our season. We were very fortunate to have very close relationships with our buyers. that they were so helpful in helping us like find homes for the rest of these coffees.
Awesome.
So now this year, what we've done, we've just decided to work a lot smarter in the sense that we want to make sure that we have as much pre-orders as possible, especially for these special processes. Because what I learned is that it's a lot harder to sell like a specially processed coffee late into the harvest as opposed to just a traditional wash. So we have to be a lot more mindful on, or just having more often communication with our clients as well.
And have you encountered any problems this year?
So far, no.
And have you guys been affected with the maturation of the beans this year?
Yes, great thing that you mentioned that, because I was actually just talking with our ag tech about that. That a lot of people had told me that they think that it's going to be something good because it's a slower maturation. But he brought up a good point that what happens in colder temperatures that you probably can relate to is that it tends to dry you. Like especially if you're in colder winters, it dries your skin. It's the same with coffee plants. So they're actually right now suffering like a little bit of dehydration. So it's not exactly a good thing. We're actually hoping for a little more sunlight just so we can finish that maturation stage.
And in your opinion, what is sustainable coffee and what sustainable practices are you guys doing on your fincas?
Sustainable coffee is absolutely coffee with practices that work in conjunction with nature. I feel that for like the longest time we've been trying to control nature or dictate how it should work, where it should have been the other way around. We had to been adapting to nature. So here on this farm, we're actually certified UTZ, which I guess now would technically also be a Rainforest Alliance. UTZ requires us to provide all the latest training to our employees, which we do like from even harvesting to processing, like any new information that I'm learning, I'm trying to transmit to them as well. But also we do not cut down trees. We actually have a reforestation program. We try to plant more trees. Limoncillo specifically has 27 hectares of protected area, which means we don't grow coffee there, we don't do anything there. It's all protected rainforest, which we also don't allow hunting on, or we don't also allow the use of pesticides near bodies of water. Like I was telling you before, we have 7 waterfalls and quite a few rivers. So we have to be very mindful that we don't contaminate the water sources. In addition, any water that we do use for like the processing at the wet mill, we do have it like we process it. We have these special tanks to add certain chemicals to help balance the waters out again before we reintroduce it back into the ecosystem. And additionally, using all this water, we have a hydro generator, which uses the rivers to create electricity. So 20% of the electricity here on the farm is renewable energy. Yeah.
And how involved are you with the communities around your farms?
Since this farm has been here since like the 1930s, like quite a bit, it's actually become like its own like little town. It's become a reference point. They're like, oh, I'm at a couple of kilometers from Limoncillo. So we have our own like schools. We have our own like daycare centers as well. Because a big issue in most producing countries is child labor. So my grandmother, her reasoning was, we need to give people an option. Because if you were talking to pickers and be like, why do you bring your kids here? They'll tell you, well, what are they going to be doing at home?
Absolutely.
It's dangerous. So you give them the option. We're like, well, now we have daycares where we can take care of your kids. We have a school now where they can go to class so that they don't have to come to work with you as well. But other than that, people here are pretty much like family. Eric, our agricultural technician, was actually born on another farm of ours, Los Placeres.
Awesome.
And he's just been worked on every single like step of the process chain.
Super
Now reaching to what I would say like he's the man when it comes to like everything agricultural for Fincas Mierisch.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And do you have any advice for any other young coffee producers like yourself?
Yes. You have to be patient with coffee. It's a crop that it does take a while. It takes like 3 to 4 years to even just get the first harvest. So it takes a lot of patience. Even ourselves included, we didn't start producing specialty coffees, 90-point coffees like right away. We've been doing specialty for over 20, 25 years. And I can tell you it's always been a learning curve. You're always learning something new. So always keep an open mind and try to work in conjunction with your environment.
What message do you want to portray to your end consumers, and what do you want them to really know and pull from when they drink a cup of Fincas Mierisch coffee?
I think that, again, it's a very labor-intensive industry. Unlike origins like Brazil, where you have like mechanized like pickers and everything you see around here is going to be picked by hand. It's going to be picked by people. And as you can see here, it isn't like flat ground or anything. It's like steep. So there is a lot of work that goes into that cup of coffee just reaching you. And if you're drinking a good cup of coffee that doesn't have any defects, that has pleasant flavors, that is good basically, that means everyone across this supply chain, even from like buyers and importers, nailed their job perfectly. Because all it takes is that just one little mishap in that entire chain, and you'll have defective coffee, you'll have like burnt coffee, you'll have over-extracted coffee. So it's a conjunction of people to get that cup of coffee right into your hands.
And what is your vision for the future of Fincas Mierisch?
I would like to be even more sustainable. Like one of my projects that I want to do, I want to make our dry mill like 100% renewable energy, because that is our source of more of, I guess, our carbon footprint, just because that's where we have all the machinery, that's where we use like the most gasoline for all these machines. So eventually I would like to do that, to increase the amount of renewable energy that's being produced by our farms.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
Hello, my name is Fincas Mierisch. I'm fourth generation in the family business of coffee. I've been in the business since about 16 years ago. Initially, I started alongside my father, learning the agricultural side of coffee, and it's been about 11 years that I'm into the quality and cupping. I'm also head judge for Cup of Excellence. I've been head judging for 3 years, and I'm a coffee lover.
So where are we standing right now?
We're at Las Delicias, which is, we have many coffee farms. This is my tengo socia partner. We've owned this farm for about 4 years. Las Delicias.
And how did the farm get its name?
Well, the farm, it all has many meanings. For me, the main one is because it's mostly Java, and for me, Java is one of my favorite varieties. It's delicious. Delicias, I think of las delicias de la vida, the beauty of life. And you stand here, and for me, I can think of, just how beautiful life is.
Great. And what inspired you to want to be a part of this industry?
Well, it runs in the family, and I'm a nurse practitioner in the United States, so I followed my father's footsteps. He's a OBGYN gynecologist, and I'm a woman's healthcare nurse practitioner. So I returned to Nicaragua when my mother became ill. So she passed, and it became extremely difficult to depart or separate from my family. Started getting involved with the coffee, and as you all may know, coffee grabs you and you fall in love.
Absolutely. And what varietals do you produce here?
Here, mostly it's a Java, and we have some yellow pacamara, we have geisha, and at the very top we have some bourbon.
Amazing. And how many pickers do you have here working?
When we're at peak, we have approximately 200 pickers.
Amazing. And how do you explain to them the importance of bricks when picking
Bricks,
coffee?
mostly, since it's difficult to be measuring bricks, we tell them, we show them the color of optimal ripeness, which is blood red. So that's when we pick the coffee, and that's how they understand. As they come in and they're hired, everyone goes through training on what is for us optimal ripeness.
Great. And what processes do you do with the coffees here from Las Delicias?
We do all three different processes: washed, pulp naturals, and naturals. We're doing experiments also, anaerobic. But Las Delicias has clients that already they're tailored to our clients' orders and
Great.
wishes. So this year, Las Delicias will mostly be natural. I would say 80% is natural, and it'll go in natural, traditional, or natural anaerobic cold temperature.
Great. And for the coffees that you don't have pre-booked, how do you decide what processes to do with the varietals that you have?
We do initially with the entire team. We do cupping, and we cup from that same. We do one cupping in that same lot. We divide it into washed, natural, pulp natural, and we do a little bit of anaerobic, and we decide on the results of that what we're gonna go with that on that year. The extra that we sell as micro lots.
Great. And what is the biggest difference between the cold anaerobic naturals as opposed to a regular natural or regular anaerobic natural?
With the cold natural, the attributes tend to stand out more. Acidity, it becomes for me it becomes crispier, more transparent, cleaner. In the traditional, you have I think sweetness stands out a little bit more. I like them both. It's all a matter of what the client likes.
Great. And what is your future for Las Delicias? Where do you see yourself in the next couple of years here?
Hopefully, as we are today, hopefully we can maintain the quality that we are producing. I think we're going to keep the same varieties as long as Mother Nature allows us, and climate change does not, For now, Jabonica, the plant, and the yellow pacamara, the geisha is still young. They survive very well and not prone to diseases.
So here at Finca Las Delicias, who makes the decisions around here?
Well, I can say mostly I make the decisions, but I always seek for advice from Eric. He's our agricultural consultant, and he's an expert, amazing. Always my father, and then it's a teamwork effort alongside with the quality team. We make decisions on what processes we want to do for this farm.
Great.
But I make the decisions.
Awesome.